Welcome to the Nausea River podcast. I'm Theo Morgan, and I'm a filthy traitor to my own cause. Or perhaps does Pennsylvania get to count as New England? Surely they were contributing more to American independence with us in Massachusetts than New Hampshire was. Pennsylvania has a lot of great metal bands, if I'm being honest, but I also forget it's such a large state. Still, I can't believe that they have both horrendous and incantation, because that incantation were from Maryland before I looked it up. At the end of the day, I want my podcast to chase interesting episodes. It just happens to be New England that interests me the most, or bands that will not go on a small podcast. But sometimes, love conquers all. Mike opened up a whole new side of metal for me. This episode is dedicated to him, my Pookie, my love, my Disso-Death boyfriend. He's still alive and well. It's just dedicated to him. This is Veilburner, one of Mike's favorites.
All right. I always start with an introduction. So who are you two?
We're collectively we're Veilburner. I'm Dave. I'm the music guy. I do all the music. And Chris, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I'm known as Chris Infernium. I am vocals, lyrics, and do all the album layouts now, design. We have Luciana Nadelia that does the has done the artwork for the last three albums. Albums 1 through 6, I did all the covers for also. So
Wonderful to have you on. Very much like your music, at least the last few releases. Anyways, I always start with the origins of a band. So how Veilburner started.
It was 2013, 2014 is when we started. But me and Chris have known each other since about 2001, I think. We met down on a farm actually, because a farmer out near where we lived we both lived at the time was had converted an old chicken coop into like rehearsal spaces for a lot of bands were renting them, these storage rooms as they had electricity and everything, and they were relatively not fully climate controlled, but they were pretty good. So it was like a band hotel, and every room, there was a different band. Guys would hang out with each other, talk to each other, play shows together. Chris came down to try out for a band I was, doing at the time, and we liked him, but there was another guy, Chris. There was another guy who a bass player that you wanted to be in a band with, so you were kind of presenting yourself as a package deal, if I remember. And
yeah,
we already had a bass player, but we liked Chris, so we continued to communicate with him. He actually joined a band, and they started practicing right down the hall from us in the same chicken coop, and then, you know, became friends then. But it wasn't until like years later he started doing another band with some guys I used to be in a band with, and they were like, well, they wanted to put a demo together. They had heard that I had, I had like my own little like mobile studio with a laptop and, if instrument interface, so I could like bring my stuff up and help them make a demo, which I did. And while I was there, me and Chris got talking again, and I told him I had all this stuff sitting around that I didn't know what to do with. Like it was just music with no vocals, no lyrics or anything like that. So while I was recording his vocals for this other project, I let him hear some of my stuff. He liked it and wanted to know if he could write some lyrics for it. I said, sure, give it your best shot. And, I liked what he came back with. And then so we mixed them in with the music I already had, and then we released it as the first Veilburner album in 2014.
Okay, very big gap between Inciting Incident and Star Veilburner. When I look at I do keep the Metal Archives pages for musicians up if I'm interviewing them.
Mhm.
Veilburner is like your only listed project, Dave.
Yeah.
What were you doing in those 13 years?
Um, like I said, I had another band I was doing at from like 2001 up to about 2007. Um, we went through a couple of different names, a lot of different people. I mean, we put one album out under the name The Tenth Circle. We actually recruited Tim Young from who is a pretty famous drummer in the death metal scene extreme metal scene. He worked on the first Hate Eternal album. He was the drummer for Morbid Angel for some years. I mean, he's pretty much worked with a lot of different metal bands. We recruited him to do session work for us in 2005 when we were doing that 10 Circle album. And that whole thing kind of fizzled out a couple years later. So from 2007 until I started working with Chris on Veilburner in 2013, I was just like, I still wanted to write music. I still had all the equipment, so I just, kept writing songs. And I wrote a lot of different stuff. And some of it was, only some of it was the stuff that ended up on the first Veilburner album. There was stuff in different styles. I did a couple albums of like more melodic kind of opathy sounding instrumental music. I did that, which to this day I still haven't put out. It's still just sitting around, in need of vocals. I also messed around with orchestra software. I did like 20 minutes of classical. I did like a classical music score for a little while, and then that was it. Just basically me by myself in my house until I started working with Chris in 2013.
Okay. The first thing I want you to do is pitch yourself to the average metalhead, like someone who I might be recommending you to, who has no idea who you are.
That's a little
Chris.
tough. We're typically not the most easily digestible music. It's not like we're not entry level metal. That's definitely the feedback that we get. But I would say with the accessibility, I would tell people that probably the self-titled Veilburner or even the newest album, Longing for Triumph, Reeking a Tragedy, would probably be the best way to get a common listener who doesn't listen to as much of the avant-garde or more experimental stuff. They might be able to hook on to it a little easier. It's a little more digestible for someone who's not been listening to metal for a very long time or has not been, their palate hasn't been quite filled with the more oddball stuff, to say. So I'd recommend them to Veilburner or to Longing for Triumph, Reeking of Tragedy if they were to start. And then they can get into the more bizarre stuff.
Duality of Wisdom comes last.
Yeah. I think people are still trying to dissect that one, even to this day. Like people are saying they're still jamming on that and finding things. So yeah, that's definitely pretty full of stuff that you're gonna have to take a little while to take in. So
Yeah, the other one is my parents listen. They're very Catholic. They listen to this podcast. They don't listen to you guys. Just describe yourselves in a way that wouldn't offend them.
well, I mean, Veilburner very much is a reflection of me being brought up in Catholicism. So it seems like a lot of people I talk to that kind of go the same path as I have seem to be tied into Catholicism of some sort when it came to either family upbringing or knowing a good bit about it. So, I mean, there's nothing outwardly satanic or anything like that. I mean, the first couple of albums, use the word God more so than any of the others. So it's more a basic occult mysticism approach to things rather than actually directing at one certain idol or philosophy.
Yeah, but there are definitely a lot of normal people who don't make that distinction.
Well, absolutely. But at the end of the day, I try not to say, Satan. I think I use it on Veilburner. I say it 3 times in vulgar incantations, but that also is VI for 6, and that is also the representation of man. So there's a lot of metaphysical things that are going into there and occult stuff that either people are going to pick up on that are into it, or if they don't, they might hear it as just an outright satanic thing, but it's not intended to be as such. So.
Do you think Satanism is overused as a theme in metal?
I do. I think overall, I don't want to speak on it too much just because I don't want to disrespect anyone's views, but I think everyone has their own idea of what things are and everything's open to interpretation. I think that the general person that may believe in Satanism in their idea from rejecting Christianity might look at it as a way as it's usually a base level kind of thought. But usually most people that I've come across that really focus on things outside of Christianity, they respect the views of Christianity. It seems to be the other way around where the Christianity doesn't respect their views. So usually people are very respectful of that sort because it's not their path. So usually when you see ignorance with it and like this hate, usually it's more from a church upbringing and just that normal youth kind of rebellion I see. Or personally, I think you're just trying to get attention. I don't think Watane needs to let you know what they're about. Their imagery really tells you who they are and what they are. And most of those kind of bands like Dissection and stuff like they don't outwardly scream Satan. I think you can get the vibe of what they're selling and what they're playing.
Now, I grew up in the 1980s. Back then, there was this phenomenon called the Satanic Panic. And I think a lot of it was, in the early days, was driven by, there was, all these outlets that were complaining about, the devil in rock music and everything. And I think, a lot of bands immediately saw that as a way to get notoriety. They were going to, they all started jumping on that trend. And, it wasn't until you heard some of these people, pounding pulpits and protesting about backwards messages. Well, it didn't exist. It wasn't a thing. But, that put the idea in people's heads. Next thing you know, you have all these metal bands singing about the stuff that the people driving the Satanic Panic were trying to force down Middle America's throats as being real. Well, they went ahead and as a knee-jerk reaction to get notoriety, they made it real. So I was kind of around back when all of that started with like all the satanic imagery and everything. And it really was a knee-jerk reaction to, bands were doing because, it got them notoriety. If you can get on there's a group called the PMRC, if you could get, your album tagged with that parental advisory sticker, it was like, that's what the kids wanted to listen to. So it was sort of like an arms race who could be the most offensive, who could have the most, have the imagery that would be most offensive to like, the church groups and everything so that they could get that publicity. So yeah, and naturally as like anything, it became overused. And I think by the mid 90s, it was, you started seeing just too much of it. From a commercial standpoint, every metal album you picked up had to have its inverted cross or its pentagram or its imagery. But that all started in the 80s and was driven by that whole phenomenon, as I remember.
So pivoting away from that, what do you think what are your top musical influences for Veilburner?
Music-wise, like I said, my biggest influences are 80s metal because that was what was around in my formative years. It's what made me want to play guitar. It's what made me want to write metal music. So you have your Ozzy Osbourne, your Slayer, your Metallica, and all the other big four thrash later, the Swedish and the Florida death metal scenes of the early 90s. It was only more recently that I started letting influences from other types of music kind of seep into like my little recipe. You get older, you start to appreciate different types of music. You start to appreciate music that you might have hated back when you were a kid, or maybe kind of listened to as a guilty pleasure, but you didn't want your friends to know you listened to. But now when you're an adult, you're just like, you come to have an appreciation for some of that stuff. So, I'll let things like 80s, like 80s new wave elements or 60s psychedelic elements seep into the mix. But that didn't come along until a lot later. But that's pretty much, the path that led me to where I am now.
Do you listen to anything that you would consider like, dissonant death metal or weird death metal?
Yeah. I would say the first like weird, like, quote unquote weird dissonant band I listened to was probably I started listening to Blue Dowse Nord and Deathspell Omega right around the same time, around 2003 to 2005, and I remember them having a really big impact on my writing style. Because up until then, I didn't feel like there was anywhere new you could go with extreme metal, and then here comes all this stuff out of France that just kind of changed the game and just really kind of opened it up to, and it really just kind of was like, wow, you know what? There's still a lot of things to discover. There's still a lot of things. Um, there's still a lot of uncharted areas that you can take this and make work. So I think it was when I started listening to those bands is when I was like, well, maybe there's even more to discover. Maybe I should take these elements that influence me up till now and not copy what they do, what these other French bands are doing, but try to find some ground that they hadn't or take some of that influence and then try to mix it little bit of that in with the things that influence me that might be off the beaten path. So I was like, I really wanted to do what they did without doing what they did. I love the pioneer spirit. I didn't want to copy necessarily. So I was like, all right, let me see if I can find my own recipe. These guys were able to find their own recipe. It's working. I really like it, but let me see if I can find, my own recipe and maybe, take it in a slightly different direction.
Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Morbid Angel, was a huge influence. I think for both of us, that's one you didn't mention. Deathspell Omega is one of my favorite. I listen to other things. Florence and the Machine is an influence. A lot of the '80s goth stuff, like The Cure and even Sisters of Mercy. Like I jam all that. Some industrial. So we both kind of pull from the same pot, even though there's a slight age difference. But I mean, we always kind of connected when we were in the other bands. So we always kind of migrated towards each other because we had the same influences. But yeah, Morbid Angel's huge. Slayer, your typical ones. But I really like the more dissonant anymore as I get older, the more odd I seem to appreciate more because I feel like that law of diminishing return really hits you as you get older. If I want to listen to something that sounds like Deathspell Omega, I'll listen to Deathspell Omega. There's too many bands that now, they're all great, amazing musicians, but I'm just like, I can't focus. I can't keep up with all the new bands. So they really have to jump out to me and sound different for me to really, really grab onto it. I like Ulcerate. They're one of the ones that have been around for a little longer now. But I mean, when I first heard them, I thought they sounded really original and stuff. There's so many to name, but again, Blue Dowse Nord too. They're a huge influence. So even Tenebrosa when they're around. I love Hail Spirit Noir. A couple of their albums recently, I wasn't as much on. They got a little too clean and progressive for me. I kind of like their dirty or dissonant stuff. So, but yeah, I'm all over the board when it comes to music. I listen to just about anything.
Yeah, Portal's another band that seems to have really broken the mold over the last 15, 20 years, and kind of did their own thing with the whole dissonance sort of atmosphere. So there's bands that come along that just keep showing that there's new things to do. All you got to do is try.
Yeah, I think Portal is that was the first. I think that was the first extreme metal band that really surprised me with what they could do.
Yeah.
You can't copy them.
Of course, since your band is named after an Enslaved song, what do you say that Enslaved is a big influence on you?
Yeah,
they're always so you never know what you're getting with them. So that's really much appreciated on my end. I always like when a band can surprise you with, they have such a range that you never know what bag they're going to pull out of for their next album.
Yeah, and Chris was the one who, when we were trying to think of a band name, he suggested that as a potential band name. And I remember I hadn't heard that was one of their songs at that point, and then I learned that it was, but I remember when saw the word, it really kind of spoke to me. I was like, I don't know how, I don't know anything about the enslaved song, what it was about, but I like that word as
Hmm.
as a way to describe our music. Because, if you think about the word metaphorically, which I was trying, which, that's what I was doing at the time. I was thinking, I'm trying, like, we're trying to meld so many different influences. People love to put things into like genre boxes.
Hmm.
Um, and put barriers up between all these different genres and subgenres and everything. And I feel like Veilburner is a kind of a pretty neat way to describe like a type of music like ours that tries to maybe break down some of those barriers or sort of like, burn away these divisions people make between this type of metal, that type of metal, and whatnot. So from a musical perspective, I thought it was a really good way of kind of describing the music. And Chris, I'm sure you had your own thoughts as to, um, you know,
Yeah,
this,
yeah. I mean, like with the way that Dave writes, I mean, it pulls from so many different influences, and also what I had envisioned for what we were doing lyrically in the concept. It's just really taking spirituality, psychology. It's adding all those layers together, and we're trying to create something that's literally burning the veil from some of these not only mysticism but the music. It's really how can you describe us, and really that's veil burner. We're
Hmm.
kind of, if we can't fall into a category, the happier I think I could say we are. If you say what the hell is this, I'm very happy with that. I don't want someone to say, oh yeah, that's just black metal, or yeah, that's just death metal, or that's weird music. Like it's cool to have people say, how do you define this? I think you're you're winning in the music spot, at least on that level.
yeah, and I think that also I think that people who write about music and review music, for a job or for a hobby, like to get, bands like that dropped in their lap once in a while, but especially if they listen to a lot of different albums, because it all starts sounding the same and they get jaded. So when you have a band that comes along that kind of breaks the mold, I think it's kind of reinvigorating for them. You know, they get to write about something they hadn't heard before. And I think that they really like that. And I think it comes across in the reviews, and I think it gets other people excited about hearing it once they read that type of description, of a band. So works to our advantage.
Hmm. And is there a band that I want both of you to name one band you think people are really sleeping on in 2026?
Chris, do you have one ready to go? I might have to think for a second or two.
I got a couple that I'd name. I don't know how well known they are. I mean, especially ones locally, and I mean, it's just one of my boys, but Zabarai, it's PA Dutch metal, but Max, he had an old band called Horde of the Eclipse. Max is just a great dude. Um, Zabarai is phenomenal. Great black metal band. I think he has a lot that he's going to show the world. I know they're playing out more. He's just trying to get on the right label. You have Ben from Venomous Echoes. They're on iVoid Hanger.
Yeah, good one.
He's phenomenal. Steven and Sleep Paralysis. I heard some of his newer stuff, and I mean, Jesus Christ, he makes Igor sound like Sesame Street on some of the stuff that he's doing. So like, I told him, like, he's talking to me. He's like, yeah, I feel like it's Imperial Triumphant. I was like, it's not Imperial Triumphant. You should be happy with that. But like, you're pushing Igor. All you are missing is some chicken clucks. But it's done in such a weird, like, it's very unsettling. The music's very unsettling, which I think is a good thing. But I think he's going to get a lot of comparisons with his newer material to Igor. But yeah, off the top of my head, I definitely push those three. I Am the Trireme, or IATT. That's another project that like they're good dudes, and it's good music.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know Jay from IATT.
Oh, okay, yep.
Yeah,
mhm.
like not like just kind of more in passing, but they did a tour with My Missing Half, who are a melodic death metal band from my area. So, small circles.
Yeah, the only other I talked to the guys in Hex Rot too, and I just I love that. That was that and Floating. They were my two favorite albums last year.
Look,
Um,
yeah. I didn't
but
listen to
Hexrot, they're
Floating.
good. Yeah,
I feel
that's
I like Slagmauer too from I think they're from Norway. They just put out a new album. I don't hear them people talk about them a whole lot, but I think that they've been around for years, and I think that their stuff is pretty interesting.
you saw their whole their social experiment they did with Snore from Thorns, right?
Oh yeah, where they went out into the woods or something, and they people thought that they were
Yeah,
lost, and
Oh yeah, that band.
yeah.
yeah, Snore, good old Snore from
Mhm.
Thorns.
But yeah, I don't see them getting a lot of I mean, I always thought their music was pretty interesting, had a really cool sound, but I don't know if they need to resort to like PR tricks. I think their music should really kind of stand on its own. But hey, if it got new people into them, more power to them. But I do like the new album that they just put out. I've been spinning it a lot.
Nice. I guess like kind of speaking of Hexrot, they live very close to me, so I just know those guys.
Yeah, they're
Um,
great.
I do talk to them about goings on with transcending obscurity and all, and they said that you have like six albums worth of material ready to go. Is that true?
Oh,
We have two and a half, two, a little more than two. It's not quite six. We have album 9, which is finished and turned into the label. They're going to probably most likely be releasing that before the end of the year. I just finished the music for our 10th album, which I've given to Chris, and at some point he'll after he digests it, he'll start writing lyrics as usual. And then I just recently finished the first song on what I hope will eventually be album 11. So we always have, we're always like at least, we've always been at least a couple albums ahead of, of the release schedule because we don't have, we're not a live band. We don't have like, a group of musicians that we go out and
Mhm.
perform with. So all of that time, money, and expense that bands would normally put into keeping, keeping their doing their like touring and doing like live performances and putting their effort and energy into that, we don't have those logistics to deal with, so we can always stay in the creative headspace. When we finish one album, we can just roll right into the next. um but that is slowing down though. Like right now I'm sort of creatively bankrupt. Like I don't have one idea to work on or flesh out right now. Usually I come up with one like at least like every month. Um, and it took like so long to get through album 10 that I've hit that point where the ideas are coming in fewer and further between because you don't want to write something that sounds like something you did before. But the more you put out, the less there is, the more you're going to throw out because you have a bigger back catalog to compare new stuff against. So I'm throwing out more stuff because it sounds like something that we've already did before, and I don't want to repeat myself. So fewer things are actually making it through the filter to be fleshed out into songs. So yeah, it's just a natural. I think that's just the natural course of evolution. Yeah, you run out of ideas after a while, or they start slowing down. So it'll catch up. I mean, Transcending Obscurity used to have us on like an every 2 year release schedule.
Mhm.
But these last couple, they've been firing out like every year. And if they fire out album 9, release album 9 this year, well, then they'll almost be caught up to us. So there's going to come a point where they're going to catch up to us, and then um, it'll be, you know, we'll have to dig deep to find more stuff. They have to start keep digging deeper to find more stuff, and the releases will probably slow down in frequency. But it happens. That has to happen because who wants to get the same album every year?
Yeah. What I heard is that you were just very productive during COVID.
Oh yeah, this musically, this album that just came out, The Longing for Triumph,
Hmm.
Reeking for Tragedy, that was my COVID album. That's the one I wrote during the COVID lockdown between um, March 2020 and I think March of 2021. So that's what the album you just released is what you heard is what I did during COVID, and then Chris got it after the lockdown lifted and started writing the lyrics for it then.
Do you think you'll ever be able to recapture that, or is it just like isolation induced lightning in a bottle?
that was definitely part of it. And I don't think that, my lifetime will probably never have circumstances like that where you literally just have nothing else to do but sit and isolate and be that. I wouldn't want to basically be that isolated again from
No.
people, first of all. But I think that that whole era, I think, just produced some great music because bands could they could clear their schedules, clear their minds, let the coffee percolate in their brains, and without any distractions. And I think that whole era just produced a lot of great music that came out in the subsequent years.
One weird thing I remember is like I felt like 2020 had some pretty solid releases, and I had to remember they probably wrote those the year before.
Yeah.
Oh well. Um,
I remember going to that Oronti Pazuzu did that lockdown concert where they basically live streamed
mhm.
a performance that they did in like somewhere in Finland where they lived, and it was just like sort of a virtual concert. Like you logged on at a certain time, and then you could watch the performance as it was happening. And I remember it being really good. I remember you could buy a T-shirt, but they only had the window open for like 12 hours where you could purchase this T-shirt, and then they stopped selling it. So I made sure to get one of those, and I haven't worn it because I'm hoping maybe it'll be valuable one day since it was um, because there were no tours in 2020 yet. I have a 2020 quote unquote, um, T-shirt. So I'm hoping, I get a little bit of return on investment on that in the future, but I won't wear it because I don't want to fade it or anything like that. But yeah, weird time in history.
So this one is something I'm asking just on behalf of my boyfriend, who, unlike me, is actually a musician. Recently, he's been like really into the process of songwriting, but having he's having trouble being like productive with his time and has been asking for advice. What advice would you give him for being productive with your time?
Um, what I try and do, I don't push anything. Like if I sit down, I won't sit down and try to like create something if I'm not feeling it. Um, so what I do to make most use of the time that I do have to record is when I get ideas, if I'm not like in a place where I could sit down and start fleshing it out, or I have something else to do, or if I'm not at home, I basically, if I have a melody idea or a part idea, I basically hum it into the voice app on my phone. Because if I don't do that, I'll forget it. Like if I try to
Mhm.
remember what the idea later, I'm not going to be able to remember it. I've lost so much music over the years because I didn't think I would forget and I didn't, and then I forgot or whatever. But yeah, just I have a whole collection of these like little audio files on my phone of just me humming into the phone, humming a melody in there. If anybody steals my phone and comes across them, they're going to think it's the weirdest thing they ever heard in their life. But to me, it makes sense. Like it's a reference point. And then when I want to be productive, you know, I sit down, I listen to them, I find some that, okay, I remember that now, but that sounds like it would go good with this idea, in this file. I'll find about two or three of them that sound like they would make a good song. And then what I'll do is I'll sit down, when I have time, and then I'll flesh them out on the golf. I'll figure out how to play them on guitar or whatever instrument I'm hearing, and then I'll program the drum pattern. And then I'll start with those two or three ideas, and then I'll figure out, okay, like doing a jigsaw puzzle. You
Mhm.
get those corner pieces, and then it's like, okay, now I'm starting to see the picture. Now I just got to find the connector pieces, come up with stuff that, you know, parts, come up with how to transition from this part into this part, or will this, where should these parts go? This one sounds like I make a good chorus, so I'll save it for like the middle of the song, and then if I don't have a intro, I'll write an intro, something to flow into my idea, or sometimes the idea itself makes a good intro. So what I do is I do all my creates. I just wait till the creative spark hits me, record them for later, then find time so that when I sit down, I have something to work on rather than trying to come up with something to work on while I'm sitting there. I would just be sitting in front of a computer, blank screen, not being able to do anything. So that's kind of how I overcame that little hurdle is, hum it into the voice recorder, save it for later when you have time and when you want to be productive, dig into those recordings, start putting things together.
At least as of like recently with Duality of Decapitation, Wisdom, you've been with Luciana for the cover art. And it's very striking art.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. Yeah.
I think do you think there's a strong connection between visual and musical art for you?
Very much so. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I was doing the imagery and stuff, and for the first few albums, and I just I was getting burned out from it, and two, it came to a point where it's like I can't do what I have in my head. I can't convey it anymore. I can only do it through Photoshop. I just can't draw anymore. From general labor and stuff, my hands are all jacked up. I can't even play guitar or anything. They blow up like Mickey Mouse. So I just stick with vocals, doing lyrics, doing the layouts. I came across her a couple years ago, and I was just floored by the way that her art looks. It's very medieval. The occult aspects of it, she's very learned and well versed in it. So I know that the imagery is going to match what we want with the lyrics and the music. And so I actually came across the Duality of Decapitation and Wisdom and Longing for Triumph. She already had those finished, but they worked so perfect for those two albums. It was like they were meant to be. And for album 9, she did the art. We have it, and it was done from scratch. She read through the lyrics, she listened to the music, and she came up with the image off of those two things. So, and I don't think I'll speak for I couldn't be any happier. Pretty sure Dave's the same. He can answer that for himself, but she knocked it out of the park as we figured she would.
Yeah, we're from the old days where, at least me from before the internet, like you didn't unless you knew somebody who already owned the album, or less the band's songs were played on the radio, like the album art was your only reference point for what you're looking at might sound like. So back then it was very important to have good cover art, and more importantly that the cover art kind of match what was inside, or else you would buy this album blindly based on cover art, and then you would listen to it, and if it didn't match your expectations as to what the cover looked like, it was kind of like, let down. But that's not much of a problem these days. With the internet, you can hear everything, but I still think it's really important that sometimes people's first impression of you is the album cover they see pop up on their phone or computer screen, when they're looking at a music website or something. So that is what in some respects what entices people to dive deeper and actually listen to you, is if they like the cover art or like what they see imagery wise. So yeah, I still think it's very important, even though we live in a Spotify age where you can hear music without seeing a visual representation first. I think there's still a number of instances where people see first before they hear, and what they see entices them to dig deeper.
And for Chris, since you say that you do like design and layout, can you explain a little more about that? Do you do like the art? Do you give art direction to Luciana, or is it something else?
No, so she does strictly the album cover,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, for this one specifically, it's the first one that she did from scratch for us. So she listened to the lyrics and she listened to the music, and we just gave her a color scheme, like, hey, this color we would like to see. But outside of that, I didn't tell her, hey, we want to see a demon, or we want to see snakes, or we want to see a sarcophagus, or a blue sky, or black. Like, she did it solely off of reading, listening, and then going from there. The album layouts, what helps us is my wife does all the photography for us. So when we want to play dress up and stuff, she goes out waits patiently and tries to choreograph what we're doing in poses and stuff, and then I take that and do it into the layout design with a slight filter here or there, just to kind of get the color filters that I want that will match the rest of the scheme from the cover art or what color we chose. So we picked different colors for each album. So Longing for Triumph was blue, so the color scheme was more blue, and tried to go with that color palette for the photos and everything. That's kind of why it was like the bluish, pink, purple kind of haze. So we have a color picked out for 9, and ultimately just we pick a spot. We have a new spot that you'll see with album 9 that I think we'll probably hang out and go to quite a bit here for the next few albums, because it's just a really neat spot here in PA that is out on the river, but it looks like it's from another world. Huge rock formations that just look alien, so it really fits what we're going for. So yeah, basically just get all the photos, find ones that work, put them in there, get the nice color filter, and just try to find the best design for it that not only accents what we want, but accents the cover and what we're going for theme-wise for that album.
Cool. So I'm going to switch to the topic of your record label, Transcending Obscurity. You've been signed to them for a while, it seems. I feel like I feel like I hear more about their new recruits. So I just did like a quick fact check to look to see what you released with them, and I'm like, oh, that's most of their career.
Yep, everything. The first 3 albums were independent releases. After the 3rd album is when, somebody, I think our PR, the guy who was doing PR for us at the time, pitched us around, and Kunal got really interested, and then reached out to us and told us what he told us what he was about. We got to check it out. It seemed like it was, even back then, it seemed like he was really growing. Like he was kind of onto something. So yeah, he picked us up right around the 4th album, and we've been with him ever since.
Yeah, I was wondering if Kunal recruited you, or if you reached out to him and just happened to get a good taker.
Yeah, he found somebody else pitched him, or pitched us to him, and then he reached out.
I failed to consider the middleman.
Yeah. It was great middle. I'm glad we hired him, because that's what PR people are designed to do. They're supposed to have the contacts to put the people, key people to put this album in front of, to either to promote it on their website or possibly invest.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things about Transcending Obscurity is that you get a boatload of merch options. I say this with my Hex Rot coffee mug.
And they're one of the only labels I know of that are doing that. Have all those options.
The coffee mug, I've never seen anyone else do that. Not even huge bands. I don't see I don't know if you can just go Metallica's store and get the Metallica mug.
Right. So and even the printed stuff, like the album covers or the CD cover, they have that certain shiny or embossed quality.
Yeah, the UV laminate.
Yeah, I don't know really if anybody else doing that either. I mean, it's just a great. We just love the way that they present the physical products. This season, to the customers, and it just really makes everything pop, and it's I love it.
Yeah, I mean, just in general with Transcending Obscurity merch, I don't know how Kunal does it, but all the blanks that for clothing, it's actually pretty high quality.
Yeah.
Really thick t-shirts, beautifully stitched tank tops.
Yeah.
I don't have much. My boyfriend has dropped a lot of money on Transcending Obscurity merch. He'd happily admit it. But it does make me have a few questions. So how much revenue do you see from merch?
Well, it really depends on how much especially with the t-shirts and things, I don't think that they pre-print like X number of shirts or hoodies and or anything. I think it's when they get an order, I think they have one run off, like when they get the order before they run, before they do the print.
Hmm.
That's my understanding. I might be wrong. Um,
Yeah.
and our like we have a certain agreement that says like for every X sold
Hmm.
number sold of this particular product, we'll get 20%, like we'll get 20, like a certain percent of royalties,
Hmm.
but not royalties in the form of like money, but like if they sell 100 t-shirts, we might get we'll get so many for free. If they sell 200 t-shirts, we'll get so many for free that they can send to us, and then we can sell
Okay.
if you want to. So it's not like it isn't like we get a percentage of money or anything, but like depending on how many they sell, we might get we might get some free stuff to sell on our own.
That's interesting. For some reason, I thought all sales just went through Transcending Obscurity. I think I say this mostly, again, because of Hexrot, because unlike you, they are a live band, and
Yeah.
they don't have a merch table. They do have to tell everyone, go to our band camp or go to our label
Mhm.
and get the shirts there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We don't know, and we don't know what we would do if we did have like if we had like a percentage of stock
Hmm.
sitting around, like because we don't have that live component, so we would never like we have no place to set up a merch table. So in a way, it's good. Like the way we have it worked out with them is good because it means we don't have a lot of excess stuff sitting around our houses that we can't sell or that we'd have to like sell online and then constantly be running back and forth to the post office
Okay.
mailing things out. That would create like, that would be kind of a pain in the butt. So, I mean, I like the way, I mean, for a band like us, I kind of like the way it works out. It's because, we do get some royalties in the form of physical stock, but not so many that it's all sitting around our house without us knowing how to like sell it.
Yeah, especially with like the vinyl and the CDs, they're selling out so quick now that, instead of getting a certain like what we're contractually obligated to from Canal, we've been trying to kick it back to his favor. Like, hey, you know what? Why don't you keep X amount and just give us this because we want to make sure that, he A, recoups what he can recoup, but B, people get their stuff. And it's going to be easier for him to ship out right away to everyone than having it ship across seas to us or from the manufacturer. We get it and then he runs out and then we're having to try to ship them out. So it just makes more sense we try to make sure he has as much of the physical stock in the vinyl and CD as possible. We try to take minimum because we sell them here and there, but we're not. I'm not out at shows as much as I want to be or at merch tables, so
Mhm.
it just suits him better.
He's got everything figured out logistically to get orders out and um, and handle that. For me, even though I work from home, like it's easy, like it's a lot easier for me to run to the post office at lunchtime than it is for Chris to mail something out if someone wants to buy like a CD from us or a T-shirt from us or something. But at the same time, it's like I have to, going through um, preparing something for shipment, finding a box, or in some cases going and buying like a shipping envelope or um, shipping materials, and then standing in line at our local
Mhm.
post office, which always seems to have somebody there who's like applying for a passport and like tying up the whole window. So it's like that's that would eat in when that happens, it kind of eats into my lunch hour. So yeah, I don't mind having a little bit of stock and then having somebody occasionally reach out to us saying, hey, I'm interested to see if you have any copies of this lying around. I didn't get there in time and they sold out. I might have like 5 or 6 sitting around. I might be like, yeah, I can work something out. I can sell you one of our copies of like a CD or a vinyl. And and that's a once in a while thing that I don't mind doing, but I wouldn't want to be doing that all the time.
Mhm.
Because that would really eat into my day.
Do you have any opinions on metal bands and I guess bands in general kind of just becoming like t-shirt companies and relying a lot on merch to generate revenue or generate buzz or even just be like a major component of the album release cycle.
Well, I mean, from what I hear, again, not being a touring band, I don't know
Hmm.
what it's like out there on the road. I only know what musicians have said in recent interviews. Like, for
Hmm.
example, I have seen the interview with Gary Holt from Exodus, where he's basically tells told or explained that bands pretty much are t-shirt companies these days. They didn't, and it's gotten so bad to the point where they don't make any money from the live component of the show, and with the venue eating into, or the promoter or the venue or all these different people, taking a piece of this and a piece of that for the live show. It's like the merch is really the only way the band makes money.
Yeah,
Um,
that
Uh,
that interview really stuck with me. That's why I have to ask
yeah,
well,
it.
yeah, me too. And that's like when you asked the question, I was like, he's probably talking about Gary Holt, which I
It
really saw in
shamed
that
me
interview
into
too.
starting to collect tapes.
Hmm,
Like
yeah,
I think it's a good filter. Like I don't have the room in my apartment to go crazy, but
mhm.
if a band is making the effort to sell on cassette, I feel a little more obligated to get the music that way.
Do you have a tape deck to play it on?
I thought I did.
I haven't had one in years. I actually um got rid of all my cassette tapes. I think it was when we moved into the house we're in now in 2011. Like we were trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to take? What's going to make the move? What are we going to trash? And at that point, even by 2011, I was like, I haven't listened to any of these. I had a whole crap load of tapes, and I'm like, I haven't listened to them since the 90s. I don't even have a tape deck to play them on anymore. And this is before the whole tape revival thing happened.
Hmm.
So it was like they were considered worthless. So I actually, you know, I threw out lots and lots of tapes when we moved because I figured that they were worthless. And then of course a year later, I think it was right around 2012, 2013, I started hearing the buzz. Tapes are getting popular again. And if you have old tapes, you can probably get some money for them. Like, of course, like the minute I hold on to these things forever, and then the minute I throw them out, suddenly everybody, a year later, everybody wants them. So that's how that worked out.
Yeah, I'm waiting to like just go to an estate sale for the boomer that forgot to throw their tape deck out.
But yeah, I'm not doing it with, I still have my CDs. I'm not getting rid of them
No,
because because I'm the,
still got those too.
I learned my lesson. They're in a container a big giant container in my basement waiting for like a CD revival that I know is probably
Yeah.
coming at some
I
point.
have some that are still like unwrapped from when I got them at at my local music store.
Mhm.
And I probably got them for like $5 because I was a poor high school student and needed to use the sales.
Yeah. Chris, do you still have tapes or CDs hanging around?
I got rid of all my CDs. I have like the first Immortal one. I kept like a Mayhem, like ones that were near and dear, but ultimately I got rid of everything
Mhm.
because it was just taking up space.
Yep.
Tapes, they were long gone. I had some box sets, that kind of stuff, but
Hmm.
I figured I'd rather have it go to someone through one of our local shops like Extremities or like the place that used to be in Millersville. I tried to get them out to some of the metal shops just so someone can inherit what I had because I had some first, even though it was CDs like first pressing of Sons of Northern Darkness, a lot of the Mayhem stuff, Morbid Angel, I had all that, and I just
Mhm.
figured, hey, hopefully some kid will get this. It makes their week. They don't fleece them too much by what they sold it for. But yeah, I just tried to pay it forward. I'm not using it. It's going to sit here. Let someone else cherish it.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that at least the metal community, the people who are into this scene, they do have an appreciation for, those physical formats.
Hmm.
They want to own something tangible. They want to own something with the artwork on it rather than just and the goodies that it comes with rather than um, just have it exist in a digital format. So, I mean, in that aspect, the metal musicians are a little bit lucky because even though the fan base isn't huge, the fan bases that exist do like, um, do like those physical formats, and there is still a market for them. as far as like metal fans go. So, which is
I,
definitely
yeah,
it definitely helps them in this. They're in a
I
tough spot, but it definitely helps.
I agree, even though like my collection is 90% digital only
Hmm.
between like between Bandcamp and things I pirated in 2011.
Yeah, if I
You know,
really,
no,
I
no,
mean,
sh
yeah,
I think the statute of limitations has run out.
yeah, I mean, I don't like get everything that I own digitally on CD or vinyl, but like the stuff that's at the top of my list, I make sure I get on vinyl. And I do have the vinyl, players to play that format and appreciate it for. But that's usually reserved for like the cream of the crop, or else I'd have too many. Well, vinyl's really expensive. Is the most
Yeah.
expensive thing. Um, so how they package it and the color variants and everything, that's also another thing that kind of drives my need to have vinyl is how good is the packaging? What goodies is the label releasing? In this is it a double gatefold sort of thing with like a giant booklet and or is it like something with like an etching on on one of the platters itself or or one of the records and if it's one of my favorite bands and they're presenting something that's really striking, then yeah, I'll invest in it and I'll get it for my collection.
So we've definitely mentioned mentioned the limitation that you are not a live band, but one, has it ever, crossed your mind in anything resembling a serious capacity? Or two, has anyone stepped up and said, I would love to drum for you guys, like physically?
If we would ever do anything live, so this is a double. I'll answer this two different ways for myself, and then Dave can answer. If we ever did anything live, like as a band, I doubt we would. We already have kind of who would probably do it and help out and who would be what function. So that part of it, like we have people that will do it. We've had a couple of people that have even reached out, but these are just more guys that we know that can get it done and that we're close with. Um, but it's the like it would have to be the right event to give us, we'd have to have a year or more because Dave's not playing these songs. I got to look into my file explorer sometimes just to try to make sure I'm not repeating things I don't want to repeat lyrically, because we're not a live band. So it takes me a little bit to get back to knowing the lyrics. So it's literally relearning these songs because we're not rehearsing them. The other thing is, um, hopefully there's something that could possibly be a live format per se, but it's too early to really even go into. But there are avenues that we're trying to look at that could possibly be something that is, hey, it's Veilburner in the flesh, sort of. So different alternatives that we can try to look at. But we're at like 10%, I'd say, at ever seeing us live. Would you agree with that, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely different ways of doing performance art other than live band. Um, and like Chris said, there's this one company that we were like in initial talks with who were like interested in doing some sort of like performance art event um, using our themes and everything as a sort of a basis. So, but that's like another artist taking something that you did and reinterpreting it rather than the artist themselves getting up on stage and performing their musics. But so that's something that like we're exploring. And that's in like, again, like Chris said, way too early of a phase to even like say if it's going to happen or not. But we're trying to stay open to different ways we can bring this project to people that like don't involve us putting a band together and going on the road. Um, but who knows? Maybe something will come of it, maybe not. Um, but yeah, and to just kind of expand on what Chris said about doing a live band performance. At this point, it's like what we would need is something that I don't think anybody would ever really, offer us to make it worth our while. Because like I said, we'd have to put together a set list. We have to create a band, rent rehearsal space, figure out what songs from a from like an 8 album catalog we would do and the time we would have, and then the other important thing is that there is we would want to put on a show. Like we like when you listen to our music, like at least when I'm writing it and when Chris is kind of is hearing it and visualizing how to world build around it, like they have all these mental, visuals that kind of get conjured when you're listening to the music or when you're trying to write for it, that we would want to make sure translate to a live show. We wouldn't want to have like a situation where like you have this music that sort of conjures these visuals, and then when you go to see it live, it's just guys in their jeans and t-shirts, on a stage, or worse yet, like try to do something but do it too cheaply, and then it just like makes it even worse. Like you don't want to be you don't want to be on stage with these dollar store props, like really not doing the music justice. So it's a kind of thing where, yeah, maybe in another lifetime, if we like, or in an alternate universe where like we started this way before we did and we actually had somebody pumping serious money into it, we could like put on like a Rammstein level, visual show perform, because that's kind of what I think that's the level that I really would want to bring visually if I was ever going to do this live. And, that costs lots and lots of money that guys like us just don't have. So if it's sort of thing, or if we can't do it right, we're not going to do it at all. And pretty much all signs point to us never having the opportunity or the funding to do it right. So it's just kind of something will most likely always stay in our imaginations as what could have been if we had been doing it, if we started doing this years ago.
Yeah, we're proud of what we have, especially with we put out a lot. We put a lot into the music. We put a lot into the lyrics. Everything that we're doing, we're trying to make sure that you can go back to it and keep going back to it. And I don't want to lose the mystique. I mean, we're doing interviews without the masks. We don't want to be that. We're fine with showing our faces at this point, like not being completely like anonymous. But ultimately, it comes down to like there is still a mystique, and the universe that we've built over the years. Like we don't want that to be lost because you see two middle-aged men up there trying to breathe through masks and huff through songs. Like I don't know how Guar does it. I'll even say like I'm not a fan of Mushroom Head, but like anyone wearing masks and stuff like that or anything, like hey, kudos to you. I don't know how you do it and play instruments or scream or sing or anything, because it's
every night.
Just doing photos, we're wheezing and can't even move around. So I can't imagine being in any of those bands performing Imperial. I don't know how they do it, especially with how intricate and absurdly hard it is to play what they're playing, and they're doing it in masks and garbs. So anyone who's doing that, hats off to them. They can do it. I don't want to.
Yeah, we built the world on disc, and we built the world on record through the recordings and through your lyrics and everything. If we were going to do a live show, we'd want to show the world for the way we see it. And if we can't do it, we're not going to go down that road.
That's fair. So like in lieu of a live show, what are you most excited to show the world in the future?
Oh, we have such delights. I mean, honestly, I don't know. I have enough material that will be mapped out for at least 20 albums. Will we ever make it there? I mean, we're both older and we are both slowing down, but I have a roadmap to that. I say that now and that could change, but I try to storyboard now that we've been together for so long that like I know I'm having more trouble with figuring out album 10 because 9's a finality sort of to this first part of the story. 10's kind of like a bridge, and then 11 on will be the new story arc to what is happening in the Veilburner universe. So I'm trying to map that stuff out. So like there's more than enough more story to tell, interesting. It's just the output of it. So yeah. I think we still got, I mean, this guy, he's always like, I don't know, I'm running out of ideas. And then I hear the new songs. He's like, hey, when we record, he's like, hey, here's one of the new songs. I'm like, Jesus Christ, that's amazing. Thank you. I love you. I'm so glad that we're in this because that doesn't sound like anything you've done before. So yeah.
And in the future, I'm just really hoping that I can keep walking that fine line that I've kind of created for myself between in the one hand, you don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again because then, diminishing returns kicks in and, it just dilutes the back catalog if you keep releasing the same sounding album over and over again. There's that on the one side. On the other side is you change so much that you lose the core sound that you meticulously crafted over a period of time. Like and every time we release an album, it's like that line gets taking that next step gets harder because okay, now there's 9 or 10 more song ideas that are fleshed out. Now with the stuff I write in the future, it's gotta be different enough to stand on its own, but not so different that we abandon our sound and the whole thing just becomes like it's just not cohesive anymore, or you lost your audience because you're not the same as you were when you started. There's that middle ground that I'm trying to walk between releasing the same album over and over again and changing so much that we're not us anymore. It's just, and every time you release an album, it's just gets a little bit harder to take that next step.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like looking at Nathrak or Gnaw Their Tongues, phenomenal bands. They put out a lot. I mean, the guy in Gnaw Their Tongues, I forget his name, but he's got like 20 different bands.
Maurice.
Yeah, Maurice. So eventually, like with us, we're getting to that point where like, since we don't play out, we can put more material out. But with that, like, you don't want to become a parody of yourself, and you don't want to repeat. But at the same time, you do want to pay homage to what you've built your sound off of. So I think when you're younger, you never think of that stuff. But as you get older, you do want to create. You want to entertain different soundscapes, but you also want to stick in the lane that you're already in. So that's a hard thing to balance. Like we're not going to become Lou Reed anytime soon, or like
we're not going to release a Lulu.
but like being older now, I understand what Metallica did with Load. Like I think that was like it or not, it was a natural progression of where they were going with their music. It made sense. I didn't realize that when I was in 7th grade and picked it up and was like, what is this trash? Now I'm like, I understand it and I can appreciate it more. Like, I think some of it's all right. So
having done it, you know what they go through.
Yeah, it's now. Like,
you know why bands who used to release albums every year or two suddenly at some point in their career slow down and you don't hear from them for like 5 to 10 years because it just takes that long for the new stuff to that's worth their time to write, record, and release to come along.
I realized it when I said, why do we need a blast beat there? When before I was always like, why aren't we blasting? More blasts. And then you hit an age where you're like, I don't need that blast.
Yeah, does that really service the song?
It's like John C. Reilly, that professor that he plays on YouTube.
Who's that?
John C. Reilly, that thing I showed you, the character that he plays, it's like...
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's like, what are we doing here?
Once again, thanks to Dave and Chris for coming on the show. The best time to discover Veilburner was right after the pandemic, but the second best time is today, so I can feel proud about it. And make sure musicians get some money for their music and not just their drip. Gary Holt isn't just a boomer who thinks he's important for not even being in a Big Four thrash band. But I know what the world of music is like in 2026, too. So here's my suggestion. If you want a merch recommendation for any Transcending Obscurity offering, in fact, the sweatpants. It's getting a lot harder to find all cotton pajamas and loungewear, and I'm not even a particularly earthy, crunchy person. I'm a very trashy vegetarian, and I have my full polyester and elastane bodycon dresses. I just don't want to sleep in it. So Transcending Obscurity, a one-man metal label based out of Mumbai, is running circles around Nike by having stylish all-cotton joggers, and they include very clear inch measurements for everything. Not everything is getting worse in the world. Death metal's still pretty good. I'm Theo Morgan, and have a good night.
Nice. Anyways, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you. No problem at all. It's fun. We don't get, at least me, I don't get any chance in my day-to-day life to really talk about, my music. I usually wait till somebody asks me. I don't want to be that guy who's always talking about his art. So it's like, I wait till somebody reaches out to us and wants to talk about it. I'm like, yeah, I get to talk about my band.
Yeah, or being like the one metalhead at the office.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like my coworkers, they accept who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell they're just kind of nodding, and they're like, yeah.
Yep.